Welcome to the Hard Questions, Real Answers podcast, and today I am here with a special guest, best-selling author, founder of New Life Ministries, and host of New Life Live, Steve Arterburn. Steve, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, great to be here, Nat. Glad to join you here, but try not to make the questions too hard.
Man, if I had my kid here, he is the ultimate question asker. He gives the apologists a run for their money, so I'm going to be much nicer than him. But what we are going to do today is I'm just going to ask you questions over the next 4 weeks, the questions that some of our listeners and those who subscribe to the content here at Back to the Bible, they are looking for some serious answers because, let's face it, life is hard and life can be a mess. And you've written quite a bit about the life and the messes that people can get into. And so, you've written books on recovery. You've written books on relationships, battling pornography, sex struggles. I mean, you name it, you've kind of covered the gambit. And so what I'd like to do is start with just kind of an overview of your book. Now, this isn't the hard question I'm going to ask you, but I think it sets the ground for our conversation today. You wrote a couple books, one called Every Man's Battle and another one, Every Young Man's Battle. So can you just kind of share why you wrote those books?
Well, I think the thing that Satan has attacked the best is the area of sexuality. It's just one of the greatest gifts that God has given us. The act of sexual intercourse in marriage is fantastic, so wonderful that some people think God didn't really invent it, but it is the thing that I think Satan loves to see people destroyed over. When sex is right in marriage, it creates life. Satan hates babies. He's killed babies all through biblical history and today through abortion. So I tried to do something about what I think is the biggest problem impacting more marriages and the development of young men. It's all of our job as adolescents to integrate sexuality into a healthy whole. And that's very, very difficult to do in this day and age.
Yeah, and I think the church has largely kind of avoided this topic. I mean, most churches don't talk about it, and therefore a lot of parents don't know how to even begin discussing it with their kids. And that's actually the next question I want to talk about is how would you encourage parents who are watching today, who are listening, to begin to shape that view of sex for their kids? How do you prepare a child for adulthood in a world just full of misconceptions about sexuality? What do you do?
Well, I would start before any of my books are appropriate. With our kids, we started with, there's a little book series, and the book that I love the most is Good Pictures, Bad Pictures. I can't even tell you who the author is, but it's just a beginning way to talk about this issue of images and content, with a 6-year-old. And then, of course, we wrote Preparing Your Son and Preparing Your Daughter for Every Young Man, Every Young Woman's Battle. And there, what we did is provided a book you don't even have to know what to say. Half of the book is for you to read. The other half is just to read it to your child. So it's done for you. And so that's the way we approach of getting into this when you don't know what to do. This is an angle that'll get you what you want, and that is to communicate effectively in probably the most difficult thing to communicate with young kids.
So what's the proper age? I mean, you said, you got to get to them before, it's maybe appropriate. But I mean, I've heard some people say 8, 6, 10, or it relates more to maturity than anything else. So what's a general principle that you use to coach people and parents?
Well, if you're waiting until a child is 10 to talk about pornography, images that are appropriate or inappropriate, that's just too long to wait. You cannot protect them from all of the inappropriate stuff that is there, and it is really tragic. If you took a whole gallon of black paint and you poured a little white paint in it, it's still going to be black paint. And a lot of times you just got a little bit of truth coming in the midst of this vat of distorted stuff that's really evil. And so you got to start fighting that very, very early, not with just what you say, what you do, but I do think you need some appropriate restrictions very early on so that they don't have access to everything that's out there.
Okay, so unpack that a little bit, because I actually just got into this conversation with a couple of pastors. How do you protect your children, but also allow them the freedom to experience life appropriately? Because some people, they put them in a box and they don't even know if it's light or dark outside. Other people, they say, hey, you know what, they're going to get exposed to it anyway. Let's just let them have it early. So how do you coach people in that, trying to find that proper balance of structure, but also freedom?
Well, most kids either have or they will, their school's going to give them a laptop or an iPad or something. And so you had better understand the different filters and restrictions that you need to have on there so they don't have access to everything. That's really just the beginning, is to be sure. I mean, you would never allow your child to have a library of inappropriate books in their bedroom. So why would you let them just look at anything they wanted to? But you have to help them see the advantage of not looking at some stuff, to keep their mind and their heart, their spirit pure, so that they can absorb God's truth. You just have to be talking about it all the time. And I have a 12-year-old and a 14-year-old, and I'm astounded at just how evil the stuff is. And I'm not a guy walking around talking about evil all the time,
right?
But it's there, and I just can't overemphasize. They're going to have access to it. You need to filter it the best you can, and you need to equip them with the motivation to turn the other way and look the other way. You know, really, that's probably the most profound thing that we did in Every Man's Battle. Guys had tried not to look at pornography and tried to be good guys. And we just came along and said, bounce your eyes. Not that amazing. It just doesn't sound that like it's something amazing, but it is, because a guy said, I can do that. You know, it isn't just try not to or feel bad about it, but it was something that they could actually do. They see something that's inappropriate, look the other way. And I think it opened a lot of guys up to a different world without pornography.
Yeah, you know, that concept actually benefited our marriage. I remember several times when my wife and I were at a restaurant and, you know, a girl walked by, my eyes bounced right back at my wife. And my wife said, thank you. Because she recognized I was making a conscious effort not to deny the reality of a beautiful woman, but rather just, no, you are my bride and you are my prize. I respect you enough to come back. Because the temptation is always going to be there. The opportunity is always going to be there. The question is, what are we going to do with it?
Yeah, and I think it's important that, you know, I mean, they're just some stunning women that are going to walk by your peripheral vision, and for your wife to not be triggered if you're kind of shocked or something. And then when you do, just you're right back there. You realize, oh wow, and this is my wife. That's such a great thing. My friend Kenny and I were on this moving sidewalk, and here came, right over here came this stunning woman, and we just looked at each other and said, "Not mine, not mine."
Right.
And it was us working together to do something really good. But somebody else might say, oh, well, you shouldn't even noticed in the first place. Well, when I'm dead, I won't notice things like that. But I'm not dead yet. I am a man. And I think that it's important that all of us see that how dishonoring it is to a wife just to look at somebody and glare at somebody. And a lot of times the men we work with, their wives say looking at pornography is more of an insult to them than even a real live person, because the image is so perfect and they just, they can't compete with it. So the main thing is don't avail yourself to that, and don't assume that your kids know how to stay free from it.
Well, and actually, so in our next episode, we're going to talk about children who get exposed. So thank you for your time today, Steve. And I think a couple takeaways. One, you can never start too early. be available for your kids, and teach them, and even yourself as a man and as a man of God, bounce those eyes. And I think that's going to help us all. Thank you so much, Steve. If people want to learn more about your ministry or get some resources, where should they go?
Newlife.com.
Newlife.com. Too easy. All right, we'll see you next week.
All right.
Thank you for listening to the Hard Questions, Real Answers podcast. To learn more about our podcast, be sure you check out backtothebible.org. Also, if you enjoy our program, be sure to give us a rating and share us if you like us on your favorite podcasting app. Remember, ask the hard questions and only accept real answers.